Thank you, Chair Block and members of the committee. I wanted to provide an overview for the CSU process for capital planning and some of the changes we've made as a result of the legislation that was passed in 2014, and then summarize where we are with 2016-17 capital program request. So on slide 3, it identifies the categories and criteria that the board approves annually for priority setting our capital outlay program. The criteria and the categories closely align with those of the Department of Finance and previously recommended by the Legislative Analyst's Office, with life safety first, facilities, infrastructure, modernization second, and then followed by growth. But one of the areas that is tasked is to balance the program. So as much as we have a number of critical infrastructure needs, how we address renovation and growth as well with new campuses like Monterey Bay, Channel Islands, previously San Marcos, but now that's 20-some years old already as well. In September of 2015, the board modified the criteria and added co-funding from the campus. So as far as the campus building up reserves, their change in policy is to allow the campus to build up reserves and to encourage co-funding for projects. So in the 16-17 5-year plan, we've started identifying the designated reserves from each campus for the project. And because of concerns with the new authority and to give us time looking at debt capacity, we've limited the campus's number of projects for debt financing. But I think the key is how we balance the needs of the system given the various age of the campuses and their development process. On page 4, I have listed some of the planning tools we use for prioritization. The first there, and I won't go through all of these, but the summary of campus capacity. Right now we're using a 1% enrollment growth across the system. That varies by campus depending on what academic affairs and our chief financial officer have identified based on requests by the campuses, identifying how much they have grown and their demand for our student access. We have that to look at relative need for lecture space and lab space overall. Faculty offices are on that report, and it includes the legislative goals for summer enrollment. So if a campus has not met your goals, and this is back from the early 2000s, you've established a goal for 40% for urban campuses that we achieved during the summer and 20% for urban campuses, thinking the kids move back home. We don't build that capacity. We assume that campus is going to make that goal, and if you don't, we're not going to build that capacity. So that's the report we go over with campuses to address that legislative goal. The lab enrollment and versus lab capacity is a discipline-specific comparison out in year 7, roughly, assuming the campus grows in a like manner based on the distribution of disciplines. So when we're looking at like disciplines, like projects, 2 science buildings, if they were starting fresh, then it gives us a feel for how much capacity one campus needs versus another. So that's another way we prioritize. If it's a new campus and they don't have all the disciplines, then we have to look to see who we think they're going to grow like. You know, will Monterey Bay grow to be like a Cal Poly versus grow to be like a Sonoma State as far as distribution of discipline? We have a utilization report that we provide to the legislature, and in our capital renewal model is where we estimate deferred maintenance backlog. So when you hear the 1.8, 1.9 billion, that's where that number comes from for our buildings. And we have added to that, the last item is utility master plans based on failures of systems, utility systems at some of our campuses the last couple of years. The board asks we take a look at utility master plans. Those have been completed for all the campuses, and about $700 million in additional requirements to avoid shutdowns have been added. So the 1.8 or 9 plus the 700 million is now where you hear a number about 2.6 for our backlog, because now it includes not just the buildings, but the infrastructure between the buildings. And then the seismic priority list, we use 2 lists, level 1 and level 2. If it's a level 1, that's a high priority on a DSA ranking that we try to get to even if we aren't renovating the entire building, where a priority 2 could wait until we're renovating the whole building, but identified deficiencies. The slide 5 shows the $700 million in utility master plans over different systems on our campuses. And the blue shade shows what we're proposing to fund based on the 14-15 program. This is where the trustees have carved out $10 million of the 14-15 budget, $25 million out of the 15-16 budget, and then the $25 million for deferred maintenance that's one time for 15-16. So while it's not completed, at least we can show you what is proposed to be funded based on those dollar amounts. And we've made good progress. Once we complete these projects, we'll have about $300 million left. So still significant. It'll still be escalating over time, but certainly with the funding from the legislature last year, with the $97 million, it allowed the trustees to afford $25 for capital financing. The next slide, which has the picture of our 5-year plan, really is just to let you know what is in our 5-year plan. We have summaries of the campus history. It has the physical master plan, which is what we present to the board when we're asking for approval of our environmental documents. So that's our long-range development plans, how a campus expects to grow. It identifies funding that has been both on the self-support side and from the state on the previous 5-year, and then the 5-year plan going forward, which is probably a 10 or 15-year plan, depending on any given year. We have summaries of our statewide seismic safety, what has been funded across 10 years, and then student housing, parking charts, and graphs. So it covers both self-support. And then what we added this year is the annual renewal need and the concern. One of the effects of the change in the authority is to pull operating budget more closely with capital. So we are showing by campus in the 5-year plan what the breakdown is of the $2.6 billion backlog by campus and how much we believe they should be funding on an annual basis for renewal, so it doesn't keep growing. And the next slide has a chart, as a copy of the chart that is the graph that is in the 5-year plan. It shows the building backlog, so that's really the 1.9 that's been rolled up to the 2 billion. And this shows the annual need for renewal, assuming based on the age of our systems and that those systems will come of age to be replaced. And that's where the average need comes from of roughly $130 million for buildings. And once we add infrastructure, it goes out to about $180 million a year. So just to keep the backlog from building, we need about $180 million a year. So that is provided on a per campus basis in the 5-year. The next slide speaks to the 15-16 program and how we are going to use the $25 million that was in the 15-16 budget. The board approved the not-to-exceed amount at the November of 2015 board meeting. It's a not-to-exceed about $461 million, and that includes the cost of issuance. So depending on where financing and treasury is, our staff there, we can get an estimate of maybe $360 to $400 million that we would have in net proceeds to fund the program. And if we think of where we were at the governor's budget, we were at $100 million about this time last year. So that is a tremendous swing in how we have had to adjust and look backwards, trying to be ready for that bond sale, move projects in a quite rapid manner when we were thinking that we may not have that level of funding, even though we were requesting it. So we planned the program based on the $25 million request, but when it really finally happens, we have to be ready to be adaptable and adjust. And that's why what you see in front of you today, some of the numbers you do for 16-17. So just to finish the slide on 15-16, we have utility and infrastructure projects of $254 million. Those will largely stay the priority. There may be, if we don't get the $400 million, it goes, say, to the 360 or less. We would take some of those projects out. And the same thing with some of the replacement renovation projects. We would, if that's preliminary plans, working drawings, or construction, we would likely have to lose some phases to get down to the right budget. The seismic project would go forward. That was a project previously approved by the legislature and is being moved to the CSU because the bonds had not been sold yet. Those were lease revenue bonds approved. And the bond sale won't be at least until late summer, so we won't know the actual proceeds until summer of 16. So in trying to go final on what our 16-17 budget is, we won't exactly know what's funded yet in 15-16. So the next slide, slide 9, for 2016-17, based on the governor's budget, optimistically, if there's, after you have the $140 million take away mandatory costs, enrollment compensation, if there's $9.7 million left, optimistically we may get $5 million. But depending on student success initiatives and push for increased graduation rates, we may not get $5 million for capital financing, faculty issues. But for the purposes of Department of Finance and notifying you, that is, we've used $5 million to run the numbers to compare to what the statute has as far as the limitation of debt that we can issue. And so the $5 million would generate roughly $50 million to $75 million. So as much as you have in front of you this list of 400 some million, it may only be 50 to 75, it may be less. And so we won't know until the budget is enacted, so somewhere around July 1st. Well, the CSU know, and we would report to our board probably at the July meeting of what the intent would be. So again, we've got a number of utilities. What I'd have to be mindful of is I would want to complete any previous starts. So if we have projects that we have working drawings completed, we have a number of science buildings we're trying to replace, and I would try to finish those first as far as a priority, finishing any projects that we start given 15-16. We have a number of science projects, Dominguez Hills, Channel Islands, Chico, San Jose, 2 science renovations within the renovation dollar amount, Fullerton and Humboldt. And what we're finding is with the amount of local bond money going to community colleges, our science facilities are really becoming behind the community college now, which is really not very good when we have such a high transfer rate. The growth project that we are recommending will be at Monterey Bay. Similar to what Merced has, there's a lot of growth potential. We have a lot of demand there, and so we would propose a growth project for our Monterey Bay campus. That would serve 1,500 students and provide 85 faculty offices for their arts, humanities, and social sciences programs. So last slide just really summarizes what we have found over this process since the authority has changed, is we are trying to build a program that has flexibility so we can accommodate bond proceeds that may go up or down. We're trying to make sure we notify the legislature, working with the Department of Finance, so that you aren't caught unaware of the direction we want to go with any certain project, and are trying to address our infrastructure. And then also accommodating interest rate changes, because when you approve these projects, consider these projects, the bond sale will not potentially occur until, say, for 16-17, until August of 17. And then we're also working on the 5-year plan to incorporate the deferred maintenance funding, because certainly some of the projects we would fund to replace an HVAC system that's 50 years old is also on their deferred maintenance list. So how to keep one list and keep the priorities for the campus to address those critical needs, track the cap and trade funds, and the designated campus reserves that is new to the CSU with the increased authority. So there is a move on reserves, but it's also, from what I've seen over the last number of years, we had some very cyclical hits, early 80s, the higher ed take a hit, early 90s, early 2000s, and 2008 was just early. So we don't know whether it'd be early next time, but certainly cyclical. And that's where we lose. We lose out facilities funding because we've got to still maintain the educational program. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, panelists, for this very interesting, two very different capital outlay proposals here. I don't have any questions. My colleagues may in a moment, but I want to take just a few minutes, if I can, to give a vision that some of us down in San Diego have for a way to enhance capital outlay and really leverage state dollars against private dollars. Mr. Constantoros and Mr. Feilberg both discussed public-private partnerships. Just as an example, and this doesn't come from the university, but comes from a handful of us down in San Diego. San Diego Chargers are likely to leave San Diego's Qualcomm Stadium site. They may go to Los Angeles, may go to downtown San Diego, but almost certainly will leave the site they're playing in now. It's a 162-acre site. It's about 3 trolley stops away from the main San Diego State campus. This presents, in some of our minds, a real opportunity for San Diego State to take over that property, which is city-owned, or the CSU to take the property, more correctly. And to then on that property perhaps build student housing, which generates revenue. By the way, the San Diego State current site is bursting at the seams. There are about 70,000 applications, we've heard, more than 70,000 for 6,000 slots. So there's little doubt that San Diego State needs to expand. The town-gown relationships in the area are terrible at best, and it's in my district, so I hear the complaints all the time from the residents. So we've got this 160-plus acre site that's fairly isolated, fairly close to campus by trolley, don't have to drive. And we're suggesting, some of us, that we could have student housing built there, private-public partnership. There are a lot of entities now that are building residence halls for colleges and taking some of the profit. Have faculty housing built there too, again, potentially very much revenue generating. A real problem in San Diego to attract and retain faculty, quality faculty, is that housing costs are so high compared to Lincoln, Nebraska, or wherever else they might be coming from. The state would have to help out too with academic buildings or buildings. And let's say we make this a campus dedicated to the sciences, just to pick a discipline. You have science faculty living there, science students living there. You have an academic building dedicated to the sciences. It happens to be on a river, a San Diego River, which is in terrible disrepair right now, the river. But the university and the students could take that on as a project to beautify the river, to use the river for experimentation, for just learning more about the waterfront that we have in San Diego, a riverfront as well as an oceanfront. You have obviously a need, if there are students there and faculty, there'd be some shops, some restaurants. Again, that would be revenue generating perhaps. So we're looking at this 160-plus acre site, almost the size of the expansion of UC Merced. I mean, it's a large site. As a way maybe with a minimal state investment, and this is of course up to San Diego State and the CSU to decide whether this is a venture they'd want to get into or not, but there are probably opportunities like this in different parts of the state that just require vision and work with the private sector to make them realities. So I just wanted to throw this one out as one example of something I see. We've even talked about if it's a science park, a science riverfront park for San Diego State students and faculty and academic buildings, maybe even putting an office building or buildings and attracting some biotech incubators or the like. Again, revenue generating. Maybe partnering with UCSD, so we bring the UC as well as the CSU together on a partnership. All sorts of ideas that I think give a bit of a blueprint for the future, whether it's this project or other similar projects, to use the scarce resources, to leverage them to get the biggest bang for the taxpayer buck. Again, I have no questions for you all. It was a great presentation, just this additional vision, additional idea. But we probably have questions from Senator Morlock, so it's to you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on these two, they look like they're budget bills that I had asked you about earlier. And basically what they're doing is they're just transferring over the ability to issue bonds from the state to the campuses. So I thought I heard some interesting things about setting funds aside, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So there's still some room there. And I would just, for some legislation, Mr. Chair, we were able to think ahead a little bit with John Wayne Airport. And so when the recession hit, we were ready to build. And we were way under budget because we had much more competitive bids. And we also had the construction crews thanking me personally that they even had jobs, you know, because of how difficult it was during that down cycle. So if we had cash in the down cycles, we could utilize that money so much more efficiently and get much better product and cheaper product, but high quality, as opposed to, everybody issuing bonds at the same time, all these projects going on at the same time, having to pay higher prices. So I just see a little more pay-as-you-go could really be helpful for our educational college systems, and I'll play with that while I'm here as a senator. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Allen.
I'll have to talk to you more about that because I'm not sure.
With the mic, or?
No, it's okay.
I don't want to talk to you.
Okay, if there are no further questions from the committee, I'd like to thank and excuse this panel. And that brings us to our final segment, which is public comment on just Part B of the agenda. If you had something you wanted to say about Part A, it's too late. Part B, dealing with the UC and CSU. If you'd like to speak, please fill the 4 seats here in front of us at the table. And if there are more than 4 people who wish to speak, please line up behind the 4 at the table. It looks like we just have 4 speakers. Again, if you weren't here earlier, you have up to a minute each to give kind of the headlines of what you want to say, but you have unlimited space to give us written backup materials if you want to submit that today or anytime in the future. We'll begin on our left, and please introduce yourself, organization you represent, if any, and go for it.
Hi, how's it going? My name's Nolan Matter. I'm a transfer student from Orange County, Saddleback College, actually, and I'm attending UC Davis right now. I know it's a lot about me and my background, but I think it's important just to highlight why this budget meeting and this committee is so important and what you guys are talking about and the interest that I think a lot of students have in this. I come from UC Davis, and I sit on a committee there, and we deal with issues on how to help students get connected to different resources so they can stay in, specifically non-traditional students, so they can stay in the campus longer instead of, being there for more than, 2 years if they transfer in. So I just wanted to say, thank you guys for what you're doing. I've sat here pretty much all day paying attention or trying to pay attention as best as I could to what you guys are saying, and yeah, I look forward to seeing how this turns out. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And if you sat here all day, maybe you're interested in an internship in the building.
Yeah, I'm political science public service major, so maybe I'll be sitting in one of your seats eventually.
Appreciate that.
That's not a bad thing, okay? Got to start somewhere.
Next speaker, please.
Look out. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Christopher Castrillo on behalf of the 26,000 members of the California Faculty Association. Just first want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for your continued and unwavering support for the reinvestment in the CSU and its faculty members. Greatly appreciate that. We look forward to working with all of you over the coming weeks and months as the legislators' proposals come together and these budgets are examined in a little bit further detail. Also want to just recognize and thank Mr. Troy and some of the others in public comment for the previous portion of this hearing for raising the issue of hiring full-time tenure-track faculty at the community colleges. We've certainly seen this as an issue at the CSU, essentially what amounts to what should be a stopgap measure of relying on part-time faculty in lieu of hiring full-time tenure-track faculty to meet the needs of our students, and a practice that certainly comes at a cost savings to the CSU. Lastly, and just very quickly, want to touch on the issue of compensation, and thank you, Senator Allen, for raising some of these important questions. Unfortunately, we are on the brink and preparing for one of the largest strikes in public higher education. We, like many of you, are hopeful for a swift, quick, fair resolution. We do feel that the CSU has the opportunity to fully reinvest in faculty compensation, and that simply will come down to a matter of priorities. This is unfortunately happening at a time when state budget allocations are increasing. Administration is growing, and executive compensation is on the rise. We look forward to absolutely look forward to continuing to work with you as we move through this process, and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Meredith Turner with the Cal State Student Association, representing the students on our 23 campuses. You've received a lot of praise today for your efforts last year in particular in supporting the CSU and its students, and it's well-deserved, so I too want to say thank you for that. As Ryan Storm from the CSU mentioned, when we came here last year, we told you what we were going to do with the funding, and it was really student-focused, which is why CSSA was so supportive of the proposed budget from the CSU. And the money was spent on enrolling students from your districts, on increasing the graduation rate, which is very important. And I think to Senator Allen's point, the longer that students are in, the less access they have to financial aid. And so it's really critical that we be focused on the graduation rate. And then our infrastructure needs are vast, has been demonstrated today. And so you deal with a lot of competing priorities. You sit on a lot of different committees with a lot of people asking you to support them. And we look forward to working with you once again this year to demonstrate why the CSU and its students are a really smart investment for California. So thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker.
All right. Hello, my name is Aiden. Oh, got a little closer. Hello, my name is Aiden Coyne. I'm a UC Davis undergraduate, along with my colleague there. I know the cost of higher education clearly is very high. Some of the amounts mentioned today were staggering, but I would encourage the committee, and also thank you, of course, for the committee and their support these past couple of years. It's been a great increase from previously, not just as a cost, but also as an investment with a return. And secondly, enrolling more students is, of course, a great idea because we need to compete in the global economy, but we need to support the students and, of course, the larger body of students. So I think the 6 million for the graduate students is also a really important factor. Yeah. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank all the speakers for being brief and having cogent points. Again, any written materials we'll be glad to accept today or in the near future. Want to thank all of you who made it through this entire hearing today. Want to thank all of our presenters. The panels were very informative, and this is just the first of a continuing series of hearings, so we'll see you again next week. With that, this hearing is adjourned.
Good job.